And just while we wait for that result to tick in, it's incoming any moment now. We see the Armageddon game begin with Magnus, Carlsen and Anish Giri. Magnus with white. Will we see a repeat of the earlier clash in the Catalan? Quick moves to start with. No, this time it's the Nimzo Indian and the Queen C2 variation where white gets the bishop pair, but white's queen forced around the board a bit. And
very classical.
Yeah, theoretical stuff, Judith.
Yep, and the knight coming in to attack the queen. And now the pawn structure has stabilized in the center.
Yeah, and Magnus has employed this variation recently, if I recall. This line with c takes d5 didn't have a great reputation. Sorry, Magnus trading pawns a couple of moves ago. It didn't have a great reputation for a long time, but suddenly it's come back into fashion. And I remember some clashes between Fabiano and Hikaru in this line. It gets very, very sharp. Magnus clearly has done his homework, and Anish pausing. Can't afford too many long thinks in an Armageddon. He's been caught unawares by this opening choice.
And in the meanwhile, Fabiano has resigned. Shakirao does walk away with 3 points. Very important 3 points for Shakirao, who was at the tail end of the tournament. And now, as you said, Judith, anything can happen. It's getting close.
Yeah, suddenly Fabiano's 4-point lead in the tournament might be cut down to 1 point if Hikaru wins his classical encounter. Yeah, anything can happen now indeed. And meanwhile, something should happen for Anish Giri. Any move is better than none at this point. He spent 1 minute, over 1 minute on this move.
At the same time, he wants to decide how to react on that, because after that he's going to be probably pretty fast, the next moves. Sacrifice the pawn for compensation. Let's see whether is he going to be really having enough compensation in this game.
Yeah, and Magnus knows what to do, of course. He did not hesitate at all. He grabbed the pawn, and here black has to decide how to compensate. You need to be quick. You need to get pieces into the game while all of white's kingside pieces are still asleep.
And of course, queen exchange in Anish's game, as in so many other games. This is what we've seen, but I think this is the good move. And then play rook c2, looking for counter chance, and compensation will be pretty obvious. But I'm sure that black will have to make accurate moves.
Yeah, 2 options for white. Either you keep your bishop alive, or you save a bit of time by capturing this black knight. You give yourself a tempo, but on the downside, you don't have the bishop pair. So Magnus retreats back to f4. And yeah, that rook is going to land any moment now. There we go, rook to c2. How does white evict those black pieces? The black knight in the center can be kicked away. Question mark, though, attached to that move, because Magnus does immediately play f3. Knight has to go back to f6.
Yeah, that's kind of a painful news.
Yeah, I wonder whether Anish should have finessed this, maybe played a move like g5 first.
Maybe g4 is coming.
And it is.
Because the black bishop can't go to g6 because rook c1 immediately with some tactics. And if the bishop has to move back to e6, then rook b1 will be possible. And then e3, bishop d3 comes.
Yeah, slowly but surely, white can evict those black pieces out of his half. He's already kicked back the knight and bishop. I love your move, Judith, there. Rook b1. Magnus loves it too. I think he's just played it. And 2 moves before Magnus establishes full stability. e3, bishop d3, and then it's just an extra pawn and bishop pair.
Well, this is absolutely a home prep for Magnus, I believe. This was a great trap.
It was a trap, and it had been played before, and it was just a careless moment from Anish. And once again, Magnus being very wily with his opening choices. And now the bishop does come to d3, the rook is kicked back. But as David and Judah have been highlighting, white is simply material up with a great position and to boot.
And Anish looks away from the board in disgust, not liking what he's done. Even if Magnus didn't have the extra e3 pawn, I think he would still be a big favourite in this game, just because white has full control. Bishop pair, white just needs to get organised.
Knows it exactly, that things are not going well. To have such a position against Magnus, pawn down, bishop pair, he's going to be playing king f2, I think, simply, and eventually e4. I had some bad experience against Magnus back in Vacancy. Some
similar
I didn't
lines.
have a pawn up, but just the position was not good.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Judith, you mentioned the strategy, getting the queens off as early as possible. It works against most people, but against Magnus, maybe one of the exceptions. He loves these types of positions as well, when there's no risk, no complications, just slowly improving. The extra pawn, just a bonus. Extra 3 minutes also can't hurt for Magnus Carlsen. I think it would be the biggest shock of the tournament if Magnus didn't convert the advantage from here. Giri looking away again. He's got his pieces on nice squares, but they can go no further.
You can see how annoyed he is with the position having on the board.
Yeah, and it's maybe a new experience for Giri. It's rare to see him kind of lost out of the opening ever, let alone kind of after 15, 20 moves. Disaster, and Magnus just taking his time. He'll improve the white rook on h1. He'll start playing moves like h4. First he lines up. At some point he might play a4, b3, kick away the black knight from c4. And black will have no more counterplay.
Well, black will have some tiny hope in the fact that Magnus is in a must-win situation. So if Magnus for some reason squanders away his advantage, then okay, it's okay. But okay, well, Anish cementing his knight on c4. This is good strategy. It's very difficult to recommend anything for Anish other than just to make his pieces better and just hope for the best. I realize that hope is not a great plan in general.
It's the hope that kills you.
But still, it's something.
Yeah, and some small threats. Knight takes b2 occasionally in the air. The black knight hopping out the way. But yeah, it's the type of position you just have to play annoying moves. That's what I try and do in Blitz when things are going wrong, but your opponent doesn't have too much time. Just confuse them, or at least block their plans until they get frustrated. That's the only hope now. You can see on the camera, I've never seen Anish this devastated, this annoyed at himself before.
Yeah, because it's just after 10 moves or so, it was obvious that he's going to go behind in material.
He's picked up the bishop. Oh,
fumbling the pieces, Anish. We see a trade there. White's knight has a beautiful square on c3 now. What is Magnus's plan? He just bypasses the pawn. Wow, trying to create a passed b pawn. If black doesn't capture en passant now, then White's knight will sit on c3 forever with a nice blockade. We see a trade. Opposite colour bishops at least, but small solace. Still a pawn up. Okay, everything coming off the board.
Well, Magnus certainly has his eyes on the b6 pawn. It's now time for the bishop to get into the game, perhaps retreat to d7, support the advance of the b pawn, but nope, he's pushed his h pawn. And they always say when you're struggling, exchange pawns, sorry.
The problem for Anish is that he's simply lost another pawn now. If the black knight takes back on h5, white has bishop c7 and the black b pawn drops. The second issue is even if he goes defensive and defends his b pawn, he's going to be tied up, paralyzed, immobilized forever. This one's over. And you can see, sad move, king h7.
And e4 will be coming.
Yep. Magnus first improving his king. Why not?
Defends the pawn. No.
And that's it. Anish has had enough. And Magnus takes the Armageddon point and therefore picks up 1.5 points.